Imagine a world where the rules of survival were written in ice and blood, where giants walked the earth, their breath visible in air so cold it could shatter stone, where humans were not yet masters of their domain, but players in a deadly game alongside creatures that defied imagination. 20,000 years ago, our planet was locked in the grip of the last great ice age. This was the Pleistocene epoch, a time when Earth wore a crown of ice 2 miles thick, and survival demanded more than strength. It demanded ingenuity, adaptation, and an intimate understanding of the giants that ruled this frozen realm. This is the story of the Ice Age giants, magnificent beasts that walked alongside our ancestors. And this is the story of how humanity, fragile and small, learned not just to survive, but to thrive in their shadow. To understand the giants, we must first understand their world. The Pleistocene Ice Age wasn't a single event, but a series of glacial periods spanning 2.6 million years. The most recent glacial maximum occurred between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago, when ice sheets claimed a third of Earth's land surface. Glaciers towered over what is now New York, London, and Moscow. So much water was locked in ice that sea levels dropped by 400 feet, exposing vast land bridges. The Bering Land Bridge, Beringia, connected Asia to North America. Britain was joined to continental Europe. Indonesia's islands formed a continuous landmass, but the Ice Age world wasn't uniformly frozen. Between the ice sheets stretched the Mammoth Steppe, the most extensive biome Earth has ever known. This was no barren wasteland. It was a productive grassland ecosystem stretching from Spain to Canada, from the edge of the ice sheets to the mountains of Central Asia. The Mammoth Steppe was cold but remarkably dry. Without the moisture trapped in ice, precipitation fell as snow that quickly sublimated in the arid winds. Grasses, sedges, and hardy flowering plants created a productive carpet of vegetation. Willows and dwarf birches huddled in protected valleys. This was a landscape unlike any that exists today, part tundra, part grassland, part desert. Temperatures could plunge to -40 degrees Celsius in winter. Summer brought a brief respite, just warm enough to melt surface ice and trigger an explosion of plant growth. This harsh but productive environment could support an incredible density of animal life. And what life it was, the stage was set. The world was transformed. And upon this frozen stage, the greatest show of the Pleistocene was about to unfold. They were the architects of the Ice Age world. The proboscideans, elephants, and their relatives shaped the landscape itself. And none were more magnificent than the woolly mammoth, Mammothus primigenius. The woolly mammoth, standing 13 feet at the shoulder and weighing 6 tons, these giants were perfectly engineered for the Ice Age. Their most striking feature, those magnificent curved tusks, could grow to 16 feet in length and weigh 200 pounds each, but it was their adaptations to the cold that truly set them apart. A thick layer of fat, up to 4 inches deep, insulated their massive bodies. Their outer coat consisted of guard hairs 3 feet long, protecting an underlayer of dense wool. Small ears and a short tail minimized heat loss. Even their feet were designed for ice, broad and padded, distributing their enormous weight across snow and frozen ground. These weren't mindless eating machines. Mammoths possessed intelligence to rival modern elephants. They lived in matriarchal herds, led by experienced females who remembered migration routes, water sources, and feeding grounds across decades. They mourned their dead. They worked together to protect their young. Those magnificent tusks weren't merely for display. Mammoths wielded them as tools of survival, clearing snow to reach buried vegetation, breaking through ice to access water, stripping bark from trees during harsh winters. Males used them in ritual battles for dominance, careful not to injure, only to intimidate. But mammoths weren't alone in their dominion. Their cousins walked alongside them. The American mastodon, Mammoth americanum, preferred the spruce forests fringing the ice sheets. Slightly smaller than mammoths, but more heavily built, mastodons were browsers rather than grazers. Their cone-shaped teeth could crush branches and strip leaves, while mammoths' ridged molars ground tough grasses. Where mammoths ruled the open steppe, mastodons claimed the woodlands. Two titans, two strategies, sharing a frozen world. Together, they consumed hundreds of pounds of vegetation daily, their feeding habits maintaining the delicate balance between forest and grassland. And in the south, where the ice retreated, an even larger giant roamed. The Columbian mammoth reached 15 feet at the shoulder, taller than any woolly mammoth, one of the largest land mammals ever to walk the earth. These giants range from the Great Lakes to Mexico, thriving in the grasslands beyond the ice. The proboscideans were more than giants. They were ecosystem engineers, shaping the very world they inhabited. Without them, the mammoth steppe could not exist. They were irreplaceable, and yet they would not endure forever. Where giants grazed, predators stalked. The Ice Age supported a fearsome array of carnivores, each perfectly adapted to hunt the megafauna that surrounded them, Smilodon fatalis. The saber-toothed cat. Perhaps no Ice Age predator captures our imagination quite like this magnificent hunter. Those iconic fangs, canine teeth up to 7 inches long, were precision instruments of death. But those fangs came with a cost. They were relatively fragile, powerful enough to pierce hide and sever blood vessels, but vulnerable to breaking if they struck bone. Smilodon couldn't risk a face-to-face confrontation. Instead, it evolved a different hunting strategy. Smilodon was built like a linebacker, stocky, powerfully muscled, with forelimbs stronger than any modern big cat. It didn't chase prey across vast distances. It ambushed them. Using those powerful forelimbs to wrestle prey to the ground, it would then deliver a precise bite to the throat, those saber teeth slicing through vital arteries with surgical precision. Evidence suggests Smilodon lived in social groups, like modern lions. Fossilized bones show individuals with healed injuries that would have prevented hunting, injuries they could only have survived if pride members shared kills. Even apex predators understood the power of cooperation, but Smilodon faced competition. The cave lion, Panthera spalea, was the largest lion species ever to exist, 25% larger than modern African lions. These formidable hunters ranged from Britain to Alaska, equally at home on the open steppe or in wooded valleys, and the dire wolves, Inocyon dirus, hunted in coordinated packs. Larger and more powerful than modern gray wolves, with jaws designed to crush bone, they could bring down prey many times their size through teamwork and persistence. Yet even these predators might have yielded to the most terrifying carnivore of the Ice Age. The short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, stood 12 feet tall on its hind legs and weighed up to 1,500 pounds. With its long legs and powerful build, it could run down prey across open ground. Recent evidence suggests it may have been more scavenger than active hunter, using its intimidating size to chase other predators from their kills. The Ice Age was a world of competing predators, each carving out its niche. Smilodon for ambush hunting in forests and shrublands. Cave lions for open plains. Dire wolves for pack hunting across varied terrain. And the short-faced bear, dominating through sheer size. But a new predator had entered the arena. One without fangs or claws, without great size or strength. Yet this predator possessed something none of the others had, a mind capable of turning nature itself into a weapon. The most dangerous hunter of all was about to change everything. Not all Ice Age giants were hunters or grazers. Some defied easy categorization, creatures so strange they seem like nature's experiments. Megatherium americanum, the giant ground sloth. 20 feet long and weighing 4 tons. This behemoth was one of the largest land mammals in the Americas. Despite its massive size, Megatherium was an herbivore, using its powerful clawed forelimbs to pull down branches and strip vegetation. Those claws, up to a foot long, made walking on its feet impossible. Instead, Megatherium walked on its knuckles, its claws curled inward. When it reared up on its hind legs, supported by its massive tail, it could reach 20 feet high, accessing food other herbivores could only dream of. Its defense against predators was equally remarkable. Beneath its thick hide, Megatherium possessed osteoderms, small bones embedded in the skin, forming a natural armor. Combined with its massive size and powerful claws, few predators would risk an attack on a healthy adult. The woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta aniquitatus, was another giant perfectly adapted to the Ice Age. Smaller than mammoths, but no less impressive. These rhinos carried 2 horns, the front horn reaching up to 4 feet in length. Like mammoths, They wore a thick coat of wool and fur. That magnificent horn was primarily a tool, not a weapon. Woolly rhinos used it to sweep away snow, exposing the grasses and shrubs beneath. Fossil evidence from Siberia shows these rhinos in remarkable detail. Frozen specimens preserve their stomach contents, revealing a diet of grasses, sedges, and even flowering plants. But perhaps no creature better illustrates the strangeness of the Ice Age than Castoroides ohioensis, the giant beaver. 8 feet long and weighing 200 pounds, this was a beaver the size of a black bear. Unlike its modern relatives, Castoroides had teeth that suggest it may have been aquatic but didn't build dams, possibly living in burrows along lockshores that in South America. The Glyptodon carried armadillo-like armor to an extreme. This car-sized mammal wore a solid dome of fused bony plates, with a spiked tail club for defense. At 2 tons, it was virtually invulnerable to most predators. The Irish elk, actually a giant deer, carried the largest antlers of any deer species, spanning 12 feet across and weighing 90 pounds. Each year, males would shed and regrow these magnificent structures, an enormous investment of energy for the privilege of mating. Giant bison with 6-foot horn spans. Ancient camels in the American West. Oversized versions of familiar animals and utterly unfamiliar creatures that seem plucked from fantasy. The Ice Age was a world of giants, a biological golden age of size and diversity. But this golden age existed in a delicate balance. The climate that created this world was shifting, and a new factor was about to tip the scales, a factor with profound intelligence, remarkable adaptability, and an insatiable drive to survive. They emerged from Africa hundreds of thousands of years ago, spreading across Europe and Asia. They adapted, evolved, and became something new, perfectly suited for the Ice Age world. Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals. For 300,000 years, these remarkable humans thrived in Ice Age Eurasia. They were not the brutish cavemen of popular imagination, but sophisticated survivors with brains as large as our own. Neanderthals were master craftsmen, creating specialized stone tools for different purposes. They controlled fire with sophistication, using it not just for warmth but for cooking, crafting birch tar adhesive, and possibly even primitive chemistry. They cared for their sick and elderly. Fossils reveal individuals who survived for years with debilitating injuries. Impossible without group support. Their bodies were built for the cold, shorter and stockier than modern humans, with larger nasal cavities to warm frigid air before it reached their lungs. They were immensely strong, their arm and leg bones showing muscle attachments far more robust than ours. A Neanderthal could likely wrestle a modern professional athlete into submission, and they were cultural beings. They created art, crafted jewelry from shells and eagle talons, possibly created music, and buried their dead with ceremony. When we look at Neanderthals honestly, we see ourselves, different in detail, but unmistakably human. But another human species was on the move. Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, evolved in Africa and began their expansion around 70,000 years ago. By 45,000 years ago, they had reached Europe, entering Neanderthal territory. Modern humans were different. Where Neanderthals were powerful, we were enduring. Our lighter build and longer legs made us exceptional distance runners. We could track prey for hours, days even, wearing them down through sheer persistence. But our true advantage was innovation. While Neanderthals perfected their tool technology over hundreds of thousands of years, modern humans showed rapid technological change. New tools appeared every few thousand years. Sewing needles allowed better cold weather clothing. Atlatls, spear throwers, increased hunting range. Sophisticated traps caught game without direct confrontation. For perhaps 10,000 years, these two human species coexisted. The relationship was complex. They competed for resources, certainly, but they also interbred. Modern humans of European and Asian descent carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. We didn't just replace them, we absorbed them, carrying their genes forward. By 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals were disappearing. Whether through competition, climate change, disease, or simple absorption into the modern human population, the last distinct Neanderthal communities vanished. Homo sapiens stood alone as Earth's only human species, and now, With the world to ourselves, we turned our considerable intelligence to the challenge of survival in a land of giants. Hunting Ice Age megafauna required more than courage. It demanded intelligence, planning, and a willingness to risk everything for survival. The archaeological record reveals the ingenuity of Ice Age hunters. Stone points were carefully shaped, understanding that different designs worked best for different prey. The Clovis point, a distinctively fluted spearhead developed in North America, could penetrate thick hide and cause massive internal bleeding. Bone needles, no larger than modern pins, stitched furs into layered clothing capable of keeping humans alive at -30 degrees. Successful mammoth hunting began with observation. Hunters would track herds for days, learning their patterns, identifying the vulnerable, the young, the old, the injured. A healthy adult mammoth was virtually unkillable by humans with Stone Age weapons. But a juvenile separated from the herd, or an elderly individual slowed by arthritis, was a different matter. The hunt itself was a carefully orchestrated dance with death. Hunters would work in coordinated teams, some creating noise and distraction to separate the target from the herd. Others would position themselves along the retreat path. The goal wasn't a fair fight, it was a strategic execution. Humans excelled at environmental manipulation. Archaeological sites across Europe and North America reveal jump-offs where herds were stampeded over cliffs. In Siberia, mammoth remains cluster in ancient bogs and ravines, natural traps that hunters learned to exploit. Why risk a face-to-face confrontation when the landscape itself could do the killing? The invention of the otlotl, the spear thrower, was revolutionary. This simple device effectively lengthened the hunter's arm, multiplying the speed and force of a thrown spear. A skilled hunter with an otlotl could kill at 50 yards, well beyond the charge range of most predators or prey, but humans wielded an even more powerful tool, fire. Evidence suggests Ice Age humans used controlled burns to manage landscapes, clearing old growth to promote fresh vegetation that attracted herbivores. Fire drives could funnel game toward waiting hunters. In this way, humans began reshaping the environment itself to suit their needs. That a single mammoth could provide 5 tons of meat, enough to feed a community of 50 people for months. The entire animal was utilized, meat for food, bones for tools and shelter frames, hide for clothing and covering, tendons for cordage, fat for fuel and waterproofing. Nothing was wasted. Respect and necessity walked hand in hand. The relationship between humans and megafauna was complex, reflected in the magnificent cave art of the period. In Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira, Ice Age artists rendered their prey with stunning accuracy and evident reverence. These weren't mere hunting guides. They were spiritual expressions, acknowledgments that the humans and the giants were bound together in the great cycle of life and death. Yet even with their intelligence and tools, human survival was never guaranteed. Winters could last 8 months. One failed hunt meant starvation. Injury or illness could be death sentences. The Ice Age didn't make humans strong because it was easy. It made them strong because anything less than excellence meant extinction. The giants shaped humanity as much as humanity hunted them. We learned patience from tracking them, cooperation from hunting them, innovation from the constant challenge they represented. In the shadow of giants, humans became something more than clever apes. We became survivors, strategists, masters of adaptation. Around 20,000 years ago, Earth's climate began to shift. The ice had reached its maximum extent. Now, inexorably, it began to retreat. The warming wasn't uniform or simple. Temperatures rose, then fell, then rose again in a complex pattern driven by changes in Earth's orbit, atmospheric composition, and ocean currents. But the overall trend was clear. The Ice Age was ending. As glaciers melted, sea levels rose. The land bridges that connected continents began to flood. Beringia disappeared beneath the waves. Britain became an island. The Indonesian landmass fragmented. Species that had freely roamed across vast territories found themselves cut off, isolated. But the most profound change was to the mammoth steppe itself. As the climate warmed and moistened, the dry grasslands that had supported such incredible animal density began to transform. Trees advanced from their refugia. Spruce, pine, and birch forests spread across landscapes that had been open plain for thousands of years. For the megafauna, This was catastrophic. The giants were specialists, adapted to specific environments. Mammoths needed vast grasslands. Woolly rhinos required the plants of the open steppe. As their habitat fragmented into isolated pockets, populations became isolated too. Small, genetically isolated groups vulnerable to disease, inbreeding, and bad luck. The extinction wasn't sudden. Mammoths persisted in isolated populations for thousands of years after they vanished from most of their range. On Wrangel Island, north of Siberia, dwarf mammoths survived until just 4,000 years ago, contemporary with the Egyptian pyramids. But they were echoes of a lost world, evolutionary dead ends clinging to existence. One by one, the giants fell. The timeline varied by region and species, but the pattern was consistent. Around 12,000 years ago, North American megafauna suffered catastrophic extinctions. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, short-faced bears. 35 genera of large mammals vanished in what was, geologically speaking, an instant. The wave of extinctions followed human expansion with eerie precision. Australia's megafauna, giant kangaroos, marsupial lions, enormous wombats, disappeared around 45,000 years ago, shortly after human arrival. Europe's giants persisted longer, but eventually succumbed. South America lost its megafauna around 10,000 years ago. What caused the extinctions? Decades of scientific debate have produced no simple answer. Climate change alone seems insufficient. Similar warming events had occurred before, without such catastrophic results. Human hunting alone seems implausible. How could small populations of Stone Age hunters eliminate species that had survived for millions of years? The truth, almost certainly, is more complex. Climate change fragmented habitats and stressed populations. Human hunting prevented recovery, particularly targeting juveniles and reproductive-age females. The combination proved lethal. Species that had weathered previous climate changes now faced the additional pressure of human predation at the moment they were most vulnerable. There's also the overkill hypothesis, that human arrival in previously uninhabited lands caught naive megafauna off guard. Species with millions of years of experience with predators might avoid humans. But species encountering humans for the first time had no evolutionary fear response. By the time they learned, it was too late. However it happened, the result was final. By 10,000 years ago, most of Earth's megafauna were gone. The age of giants had ended, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Isolated populations dwindling, genetic diversity collapsing, until one day the last individual simply failed to reproduce. The world they left behind was fundamentally different. Ecosystems evolved over millions of years were suddenly missing their keystone species. The mammoth steppe, without mammoths to maintain it, transitioned to the less productive tundra and taiga we see today. Forests grew dense without giant browsers to thin them. The very landscape was transformed by their absence. And humanity stood alone, the last survivors of a world that would never come again. The giants left ghosts. In the genetic code of modern elephants, we find the legacy of mammoths, close relatives separated by environment and time. In deep caves and frozen permafrost, we find their remains, sometimes so perfectly preserved we can see their last meal in their stomachs. Their DNA still readable after 20,000 years, but perhaps their greatest legacy lives in us. The humans who survived the Ice Age were forged by the giants they hunted and the brutal world they inhabited. Our capacity for patience, for complex planning, for cooperation, these weren't inevitable features of humanity. They were survival adaptations, learned in the shadow of mammoths. The Ice Age taught us to see the world as malleable, something that could be shaped to our needs. We learned to manipulate fire, to store food for lean times, to create complex tools and pass knowledge across generations. These lessons, learned in the crucible of the Pleistocene, laid the foundation for everything that followed: agriculture, civilization, technology. In the painted caves of Ice Age Europe, we see the birth of human art and symbolic thought. Those paintings weren't mere decoration. They were the first time humans tried to capture and communicate their inner world. The creative impulse that produced the Horses of Lascaux also produced the Sistine Chapel, the symphony, the novel, the film. Culture itself is an inheritance from the Ice Age. But the legacy isn't entirely positive. The world is diminished by the absence of the giants. Ecosystems that evolved with megafauna show signs of dysfunction without them. North American forests grow differently than they did when mastodons browsed them. African ecosystems, which still retain their megafauna, are far more productive than those that lost theirs. And history, it seems, is repeating. Today's remaining megafauna, elephants, rhinoceroses, great whales, face extinction pressures eerily similar to their Ice Age predecessors. Climate change, habitat loss, and human hunting combine in a deadly synergy. We have the knowledge to prevent these extinctions, the technology and resources. The question is whether we have the will. Some scientists dream of reversing past extinctions. The extinction projects aim to resurrect mammoths using preserved DNA and modern elephant surrogates. It's a seductive vision, correcting the mistakes of our ancestors, restoring lost wonders. But even if technically possible, can we restore not just the species but the world they inhabited? The mammoth step is gone, transformed beyond recovery. Perhaps the better lesson is preservation over resurrection. Understanding what we lost when the Ice Age giants vanished should inform how we treat the giants that remain. Every extinction impoverishes the world irreversibly. Every species we save maintains the intricate web of life our ancestors inherited. The Ice Age giants lived and died. They shaped the world, shaped humanity, and were shaped in turn by the relentless forces of climate and evolution. They remind us that dominance is temporary, that even the mightiest can fall, that survival requires more than size or strength.